All right, everybody, get ready because today we're really diving deep into a career path that I think you'll find is way more than just a job. We're talking about housing support workers. And honestly, before I did the research for this, I have to admit, I kind of pictured, someone mainly helping people find apartments, affordable apartments. But wow, was I in for a reality check? For this deep dive, we are talking stacks of career guides, interview advice, even some really cool insights from an AI career platform called RoleCatcher. So by the time we're done here, you won't just know like the textbook definition of the job. You'll understand what it really takes, at its heart to empower lives. And trust me, it's a lot more intricate and rewarding than you might think. So to get us started, who are these housing support workers actually helping? I was surprised to learn that it's not just those experiencing homelessness.
Though that's definitely, a big part of it. What really stood out to me from these guides was the sheer diversity of the people who need this kind of support.
Yeah, the guides really hammered home this holistic approach, which I found super interesting. They work with the elderly, individuals with disabilities, people recovering from addiction, even, those who are reintegrating into society after being incarcerated. And it really struck me, this idea that it's about recognizing that stable housing is the foundation. But true support, it goes way beyond that.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's not like you just hand someone keys and say, see you later.
Okay.
These guides kept using the word empowerment. What does that actually look like, on the ground?
Well, it's really about addressing each person's, unique needs, unique challenges. So for someone elderly, it might be connecting them with meal services, maybe transportation assistance. For someone recovering from addiction, it could involve linking them with support groups or even job training programs. And it's recognizing that, everyone's different, everyone's coming from a different place, and it's about tailoring the support to really meet those specific needs.
And get this, the guides even talked about how technology is playing a role. Telehealth, remote monitoring, things I never would have even thought about.
Yeah, it makes sense, though, when you think about it. Telehealth can be such a lifeline for someone who can't, easily leave their home, whether that's because of mobility issues or even just like the fear of missing an appointment and having to reschedule. And then for housing support workers, it gives them a way to stay connected with their clients, monitor their progress, offer support in real time. It's a game changer in terms of, I think, providing personalized and really accessible care.
Yeah, it really highlights how important this job is. It's not just about housing. It's about connecting the dots to all these other parts of someone's life.
Right.
But let's be real. The guides didn't shy away from the harder parts of the job, did they? The emotional toll this can take, the potential for burnout.
Absolutely. I mean, you're constantly dealing with these, really complex situations, and they're often, emotionally charged situations. You're advocating for your clients, navigating these bureaucratic systems, and sometimes you're even acting as a mediator in really challenging situations. So yeah, that definitely takes a toll for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely heavy stuff, and I appreciate that the guides didn't try to, sugarcoat any of that.
Yeah.
But, they did also talk about this immense reward, that comes with knowing that you're making a real, a tangible difference in someone's life. I imagine, the emotional roller coaster is kind of all part of the whole experience.
It's definitely a deeply human profession, that's for sure. And speaking of the human element, the actual skills required for this line of work really stood out to me. It's not just, being organized and good with paperwork, though those are definitely important too.
Right. The list was surprisingly long, actually. Negotiation skills, cultural sensitivity. They even mentioned something called tolerate stress, which honestly sounds like you need to be a superhero to work in this field.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the career guides I was reading actually had this great story about a housing support worker who used their negotiation skills to mediate a dispute between a tenant and their landlord. And it wasn't just about, finding a quick fix to the problem. It was about really understanding both sides, finding that common ground and, ultimately making sure that that tenant could stay in their home, preserving that housing stability. And those kinds of skills, those are really invaluable in this field.
Totally. And it makes you realize that there's so much nuance to this job, so much adaptability. It's like you're not just a case manager, you're a counselor, you're a mediator, an advocate, all these things rolled into one. So how does somebody even begin to build the skills and get the experience to really do well in this kind of a role?
That's where the career stages section was really helpful. It kind of laid out that typical progression, starting with, entry-level positions, a junior housing support worker, something like that. And what I thought was interesting is that they specifically mentioned having a bachelor's degree. And even A mental health first aid certification could be really valuable, even for those entry-level roles.
Mental health first aid,
Yeah,
that's a new one.
yeah. Basically, think of it like CPR, but for mental health.
Yeah.
It teaches you how to recognize and respond to someone who might be having, a mental health crisis or something like that. And I think having that kind of training, on your resume, it shows that you're really committed to understanding and supporting the diverse needs of the people that you're working with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not enough to just find someone housing.
Yeah.
You have to understand, what are the challenges they might be dealing with and how can you connect them to the resources they need.
Exactly, yeah. And then from those entry-level positions, you can, work your way up to these more senior roles. Maybe you specialize in working with a certain population, like veterans or families. The career path is surprisingly diverse, actually.
So let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, wow, this sounds like me. This is what I want to do.
Mm.
What's next? How do you actually get a job in this field? Because it sounds pretty competitive.
Well, the interview prep materials that we looked at, especially the ones from RoleCatcher, they really emphasized how different these interviews can be.
Yeah, it's not like you just, you know, show up and read off your resume, is it? They really want to know what you're all about.
It's true. And one of the questions that really jumped out at me from RoleCatcher's database, it was, can you describe a time you had to make a difficult ethical decision? Which, wow.
That's intense.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. When you think about the kinds of decisions that housing support workers have to make, but what are those interviewers really trying to figure out by asking that, you know?
I think they're looking for people with, a really strong sense of right and wrong, someone who can think clearly even when things are really stressful and who's going to advocate for their clients, even when it's hard. Because remember, you're working with people who are really vulnerable, navigating these systems and often dealing with really sensitive information. So integrity is like the most important thing.
And speaking of navigating those systems, I was really impressed with the things RoleCatcher offers for, like beating the robots, those AI things that scan your resume before a real person even looks at it. It's like a whole other world.
Oh, totally. That's just the reality now. But those tools can be so helpful because they help your resume stand out. So, like, one of the things RoleCatcher does is it analyzes your skills and your experience, and then it, like, I don't know, it sprinkles in the right keywords, so those AI systems flag your resume.
So it's not even enough to have the skills. You got to know how to talk about them so a robot understands.
That's right. Which is, a valuable skill in itself when you think about it.
Totally. Okay, so we've reached the end of our deep dive here, and I got to say, I'm kind of blown away. This whole career path, it's definitely daunting, but it's also incredibly inspiring. It takes a special kind of person to do this work, someone with a huge heart, definitely a level head, and maybe even a direct line to RoleCatcher. But seriously, you can tell that these are the kinds of people who are making a real difference in the world.
Yeah, I mean, they're really out there on the front lines, one person, one family at a time.
And with, technology changing all the time, who knows what the future holds for housing support workers? Will it make their jobs easier, so they can focus more on connecting with people? Or will it bring like a whole new set of challenges? It makes you wonder. And hey, if any of this sparked your interest, don't stop here. Go check out those resources we talked about. Maybe give RoleCatcher a try and just see where this path might lead you. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.